Joe, it was as big as a kiddie swimming pool. It was a margarita as big as my head.
Oh, I would have wanted it too.
Yeah.
Gee whiz. So we're a little early. We're going to start right at the top of the. Oh, my mic button went off for some reason. Can you hear me now? Okay, hear me now.
How about now? Is that good?
Okay.
I thought I was supposed to have that.
All right. We'll get started right at the top of the hour. I see a couple people joining on here, so we'll listen in just a few minutes. We're just getting our final pieces put together. Yes, at the top of the hour.
All right.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our 5th Solution Hour. My name is Chris Patterson. I'm the Director of Business Solutions here at Food Services America in Spokane, Washington. Today, we're going to have a really frank conversation about bonus programs, and it's an integral part of the toolkit that we have to run our restaurants. So we think it's kind of a really important conversation to have. My background is 25 years, general manager, mostly front of house, some restaurants that had lots of systems and processes and some good bonus programs, and then some that didn't have any systems or processes, and some tiger trap bonus programs too. So we're going to try to speak to it from both sides of the coin for us today. Mm-hmm. My partner sitting next to me here is, as usual, Chef Alexa.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chef Alexa Wilson. I'm the corporate chef here at Food Services of America out of the Spokane branch. Really glad that you joined us for the Solution Hour this morning to talk about, bonus programs. It's interesting because Chris was on vacation when Oscar and I chose this subject. And
surprise.
Yeah. And he came back, and actually we had a pretty robust conversation about bonus programs. And, really the reason we chose to talk about this today is because in our opinion, our industry is experiencing a people crisis. We have a shortage of help. We struggle to find people, hire people, retain good talent. We struggle to figure out how to keep our teams motivated and engaged. And the thing that Chris and I hear pretty much all the time in the 4 states that we consult in is, how do I help my managers take ownership of the restaurant? And so to us, this really does represent a crisis in our industry. Even this morning, we had a very large restaurant organization announce potential bankruptcy due to labor and people issues. So we're going to talk about bonuses today and hopefully help you all see some ideas for how to kind of put some more energy into our teams and get some engagement out there and solve some of this people crisis for us. So let's do a poll question first. The thing we'd like to know, you all can answer the poll there on the screen, is really, are you currently offering or are you participating in a bonus program? That's just a simple little yes or no.
So one of the things that, we know there's plenty of anecdotal evidence in this, and we know about incentive programs that truly there are some facts and math behind these, and that's why they're so important. Most of us, 90% of us, understand the importance of bonus programs, and recognition and things like that, but there's a gap in who actually implements them. And so it's the tangible results of that we might be missing sometimes. So there's some information out there that really could be helpful to us in the industry. And one of the most important ones is, this one really caught my eye, is engaged employees. This isn't just managers. These are all employees, account for 21% increase in productivity and a 22% increase in profitability. And so it's what they do and how they're doing that really matters.
Makes a huge difference.
Makes a huge difference.
22% in profit.
That's amazing. But the thing that really ties it together, and this is from Gallup poll, which is a huge data aggregate. They do a lot of surveys and stuff like that. I'm sure you've heard of them. They say that a good manager really accounts for 70% of the engagement of a staff. So we go from a bad manager to a good manager, that's a 40% increase in staff engagement. And when we're talking about productivity and profitability, these are huge numbers, and it's really important to understand that.
So interesting, looking at our poll with the group of you listening, at first it was 50-50 as far as participating in or hosting a bonus program. It looks like the majority of the folks listening, though, this morning, Chris, are either participating or have some kind of a bonus program, but it's just a small majority. We still have 45% right now that are not participating in one.
Well, hopefully we have some people that are maybe considering it as far as leadership and offering that. And so that's what we want to try to talk to both sides of the coin here.
So really, everybody, what we're going to cover today on our solution is why you should consider a bonus program. What should the business expect to do and have to deliver? What should the managers or the leaders do? What's their part in a bonus program? Some suggestions on how to structure a bonus program inside your business or how to customize it for what you need. And then we're going to cover some of the risks and the rewards that go along with that really impact our guests' experience when we choose to bonus our employees.
Right. One of the first things we want to talk about is what can a bonus program do for you?
It can be really cool.
It can be really cool. And the interesting thing is it can help you recruit ownership-minded leaders. And the key word here really is recruit. A good, vibrant bonus program is more than a lure to capture the potential manager candidate. It really is an anchor to attract good quality ownership-minded people. And it's something that if somebody's motivated to go beyond running a smooth shift and having a good career, that's a great place to launch it from.
Well, and there's a difference, Chris, between recruiting and hiring.
Definitely.
And to me, when I'm having that conversation, that interview conversation, when I am recruiting someone, we're talking together about what they would do for the business, as opposed to having someone sitting in front of me or with me who just wants to know if I'm their manager or their chef, what it is I can do for them. And I think when we start talking about bonus programs, because it lays expectations out, it really does set that baseline. And engagement is what grows out of offering somebody a bonus program.
Not only for the manager, but for the people the manager leads.
Heck yeah. Webster's says that engagement is the state of being engaged. And yesterday I said, well, you can't engage something by being engaged, but apparently you can, according to Webster's dictionary. But it also means an emotional involvement or a commitment, or the state of being in gear, which to me are all pretty intangible things as business owners that we want to try to inspire, but we can't necessarily just demand out of our people.
Right. The next thing a bonus program really is, it's the launching point for fiscal goals. We need a starting point. We need a baseline and then a destination. And really, two of the biggest operational concerns in our industry is food and labor cost.
Shocker.
Yeah, big surprise. But by giving a specific focus and direction, we're making sure that our leadership has skin in the game on these really two critical points.
And when it comes to managing food cost, everybody, there are really 4 type of things that a bonus program can do. First of all, it helps us to identify targets and to create ranges of variance. And these targets are basically numbers that work in the P&L formula. So what is my food cost? What should it be? And how much can it vary for me to still be profitable and reward my managers for achieving that? It also defines the way that we measure our food costs. So an example is, are we doing inventory versus purchases, or are we actually getting in there and counting? So there's measurability in a bonus program, because you have to do the math. You have to have recipes developed that ensure the accountability of the team, that makes sure that you make that target actually happen. And then there's really a big, big difference in the team. It's the difference between making tasty and beautiful food and making money making tasty and beautiful food.
Which is the goal, really.
It really is the goal, but what I find is most of the time in the back of the house, with good intentions, the team is trying to make good and tasty food and hope that the money comes. Whereas when a kitchen runs under a bonus structure, they know that the money is going to come because of all this work that's been done ahead of time.
Right. so it gives them some skin in the game on their behavior.
Well, it grows a culture that protects this idea of profit, not just the creativity,
Right.
at least in the back of the house.
Well, now we look at the labor, which is probably one of our biggest pain points. And a couple of years ago, labor overtook food as the number one line item on a P&L. And so the productivity becomes the first piece of the labor expense. It's what are our people doing? And are they doing it at the right time and the right place to impact what needs to happen? There's a bazillion things we have to do in a restaurant to get it ready to run and to handle the customers. The next thing is, okay, we have productivity. Now, where do we place the right people? Are they on the right shifts, handling the right customers, handling the right tasks at the right time to make sure that we're maximizing that element of it? And lastly, for the whole house is guest experience. We usually talk about that at the front of the house. Well, that is a primary feature of it, but that exists in the back of the house too. And it's the behaviors that support that. So what is the guest experience coming of the staffing? So are we properly staffed or are we understaffed? If we're overstaffed, a lot of times we end up with a bad guest experience too, because people get bored, lazy, sidetracked, all these other things, right? And then the team development piece of it is also the last piece of that, is in growing everybody's understanding in their role in the business.
So those are the critical things. That's the money side of this. But the other thing that I hear, we've talked about this, Chris, is that ownership, that feeling of being the owner. And obviously our owners have that feeling because you live it every day. And the thing is that there are a lot of leaders out there that aspire to that. They want to have their own restaurants. They want to step up to the plate, but maybe just don't necessarily have the skill set or the knowledge or the confidence to do that. And so when you're sparking an I can't even say that word on the webinar today. When you're sparking the entrepreneurial spirit or the ownership mind.
Just go with ownership.
Okay. That happens when leaders feel and act like the business is their own, right? The reviews from the customers matter to them. The team culture is the key every single day to having a great day. The numbers are important, and there's time spent managing those numbers. But most importantly, the leaders' conversations change. And they change when you feel like an owner, from how much money did I make today? How did I get paid? To what did we accomplish? And there's less of this nervousness or this anxiety about what did I make, and more of a community feel of what did we accomplish, which usually means more growth for the business.
That's a subtle difference, but it really is an absolutely critical difference in this conversation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's ask another question to everybody in the room there. Taking into consideration, Chris mentioned earlier that most leaders and businesses acknowledge that there are benefits in a bonus program, but most don't offer one. And a lot of them that do offer it don't actually pay it out. To me, this represents the tiger traps and the pitfalls of bonus programs. So for you all listening, have you ever been negatively impacted by a bonus program? Yes or no? I know I certainly have. Yeah. I think you have too, right. Chris.
As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk about an example of a tiger trap that I had. I was running a restaurant in California. That it was a chain restaurant, and so there were about 30 or 40 restaurants, I can't remember which, but they had a really very specific brand, and part of their brand was these frozen margaritas, which were delicious. And
if you like frozen
margaritas, brain freeze, really bad. And it was an amazing pour cost. I want to say, if I remember correctly, like about 10% pour cost. And in all the restaurants, it was a prime item for them to sell in the bar.
Sell margaritas.
But in my particular location, which was right next to kind of a financial center in the Glendale district, my clientele had a lot of suits and ties.
Nobody drinking frozen margaritas?
Nobody was drinking frozen margaritas. They were all drinking scotches and high-end stuff. As a matter of fact, my frozen margaritas were not even in my top 10 in my menu mix. So therefore, I never actually ever hit my liquor bonus, which is about 20% of my bonus program. Even though I went to the great extent of proving that I couldn't possibly hit it with my menu mix, that it was an unfair target. It was just an impossibility.
Because it was a corporate target that was applied to all the restaurants.
Correct. And so it became a really big demotivator for me because basically 20% of the bonus incentive was an impossibility in my store. It was just tough.
And they were trying to motivate you to sell a margarita that just wasn't going to be the expectation of
my clientele just didn't want it.
There's a lot of reasons I think that bonus programs can backfire. In that case, you were the employee or the manager that it backfired on. I certainly know we've heard some stories where they have not worked well for the restaurant either, that it becomes something that employees are entitled to.
Correct.
And the restaurant feels that it no longer is a motivator or an action creator.
Right.
In both of those circumstances for each side.
We'll talk a little bit more about that, about how to set the guardrails and how to make it a stretch, but not an impossibility.
So for everybody listening today, 62% say they've been negatively impacted by a bonus. So really, truly, there are a bunch of tiger traps out there and things that people can wind up either promising or accepting that they don't pan out. And that makes it really... the opposite of what you want to do with a bonus program.
It's a hard conversation. So let's break this down really from both sides of the coin. And this is where the frank conversation comes in.
How you really put it together for success, hopefully.
So if you're the owner, and if you have the intention to have a bonus, then you need to have the ability to pay it. So starting off, I would recommend you probably self-fund it on your P&L. Just right out of the blocks. Build it into the GL codes as a bonus accrual.
So save up.
Yeah. Save up so it's not a surprise piece if people accomplish it.
Well, and it's not a resentment piece when you have to pay it out that way either, because you've already got it.
Yeah, and so set the payout. So let's just say, for example, maybe it's 1% of your sales by bonus period, whether it's a month or a quarter or whatever you want. That way, it's a planned event, and you're demonstrating the intent to pay it, which sends a tremendous message to the management team that you have on staff. It speaks volumes to your commitment to developing them and their skill sets, and kind of what Alexa was talking about earlier. If they have aspirations to move on and be operators and owners, I mean, that's helping develop them. It's really an investment in the future. So as an owner, I would need to set the targets and know where we need to be, and then communicate it outbound that what the business needs and what I expect. And when everybody knows the expectations, there's empowerment that now lives with the managers.
Exactly. And at that point in time, then your leadership is in a position to take that ownership that we all strive for and to identify the actions that are necessary to back that up so that we are doing the things that meet those expectations and targets.
Truly. Now we want to really talk about controllables. We want to ensure that leadership is managing what they can actually control. So asking a manager to control something that they're not really able to affect and then holding them fiscally accountable, well, it's not really a long-term plan for success. Holding a manager accountable, for example, for banking fees or interest rates, what can you do about that as a manager? Nothing.
You can't even do much about that as the president of the United States.
Exactly.
Except tweet about it.
There you go. That's just really not scalable. So it'd be worth my time really to take a closer look at the P&L and carefully choose what items for my managers that I would want to have them control on a day-to-day basis, so they would feel empowered to actually manage the business.
Well, and once the leadership has that line of sight, they know exactly what those things are. To me, this is the gift from the ownership of time management, because now as a leader, I can control my time. I know what my controllables are. I know what my critical things are that have to happen. And I'm not just going to work to be there. I'm going to work rather to get specific things done, which, you guys, in the long run, that actually results in having to be at work less, because we're not just there waiting for reactionary responses to things that happen in our business. We go, we get these things done that we need to get done, and we can pat ourselves on the back because we did the right things and focused on the things that move the needle.
Running ahead of the curve.
That's a real security blanket. And for any manager that doesn't want to feel strapped to the business for 90 hours a week, knowing what you have to do and when you have to do it helps that.
I've been there and done that too. Next thing is we need to have really clear math to support the success or areas of opportunity. And in the end, leadership, if you can't measure it, how can it possibly be managed? So we need to make sure that we all understand the benchmarks, the measurements that are the meter for good and bad. So really, ultimately, as the owner, it's my job to set this really important metric and expectation for our team.
Well, and for the leaders who then wind up working the math, this is what I have seen in my experience as usually missing in our industry. This is where, as a leader, I want to be the owner. I want to know more about the business. I want to make decisions that impact the business positively. And yet I don't necessarily know how the money moves through the business. I maybe feel more like a glorified babysitter. This, really calculating the costs and monitoring to stay on budget, gives our leaders clear understanding of how money moves through this business and where they can make decisions to impact it.
There's so many of those, and this is what we're now start talking about, it being a layered package, having a layered bonus program.
So different things I get bonused on.
Exactly.
Okay.
So really, if you think about like a chef, if the chef is only focused on food cost and only bonused on food cost, why would they care about labor?
Or
Supplies,
guest experience.
Or guest experience, exactly. So now we're not proactively managing other areas of the business. So some layers you might want to consider in a bonus program would be like sales growth. That affects everybody, right? Cost of goods, clearly, labor, and how about maybe the guest experience? I mean, those are all really probably the most important things in a restaurant. And there's other ones you could consider down the road, but there are dozens of manageable line items in play here.
And then once we get that layered, we put some tools in place to support each one of those layers. So if I'm getting rated on guest experience, then a great tool would be maybe my comment cards and looking back at those comment
Correct.
cards.
Now it's a review.
So the tools really provided by the business leaders give everybody else the confidence that they're looking at the right things and doing the right things.
For sure. Okay, next one would be, let's make sure the targets are attainable.
Wait a minute. You know something? One of those tiger traps, Chris? You always say this. A tool that's sitting on the shelf is no good. So if we give our managers a whole bunch of tools for costing and scheduling and labor this and food cost that, and they don't thoroughly understand and embrace those tools, then that tool is useless, and that is a huge level of frustration.
Right.
And so that's something where I think there's a huge pitfall in bonuses, because there's a gap between what the business feels they've offered and what the leaders really understand and use.
Right, and the tools really are what
That's
leverages
usually where
it
the gap
forward.
is.
Really, that's a big gap. The next thing we want to talk about is it being realistic, and being the real job of a bonus program truly is to influence leaders to do something different, to develop themselves, to be proactive and lead the business.
Do something that might be a little hard, but do it anyway.
Right. So what we're trying to do really is encourage the right behavior. And if it's unattainable or an impossible goal, you're going to get the opposite effect, just like I got with my liquor bonus. Just it's not a possibility. So it really needs to be an effort. Yes, it can't be a freebie. You can't have a giveaway, but we want to change behavior. It has to be an effort. We have to work towards something, but not an impossibility.
Well, and our teams still have to trust that it's achievable. That if I work really hard for this, then I will indeed earn it. And trust happens when people believe in something or someone. And words set that expectation. The business can set that expectation with words. Actions back that up. We give people tools and make sure they know how to use them. And then the reward acknowledges all of that effort on everybody's part. And it's really the affirmation that we're all looking for.
Correct.
So trust really is the cool thing that happens between businesses and their leaders when a bonus program is thriving.
And then the next piece really is we actually need to regularly review and coach on the business process. These are business conversations. We need to have them on a regular basis. And that my role would be offering guidance to accomplish the goals. Are we using the right tools? Are you reading the metrics right? Really, in the end, it's helping the leadership achieve their bonus. I want them to achieve the bonus because in the long run, that helps me achieve my goals.
And it really elevates the decision-making from that glorified babysitter to really feeling like a business leader, because now the leadership and the business are talking about factual communication, not just emotional communication. And a lot of what we see and do in our restaurants is emotional. It's about things people feel and things people said, and yet we've got to get it dialed into more factual things so that we can impact the business.
And business, like you always say, we can't run businesses with good intentions. We actually have to be truthful and accurate in what we're talking about. So now we're going to talk about some elements that need to be present in a good bonus program.
How we actually put it together.
How we're going to put it together,
Okay.
Right.
So these are just suggestions, everybody.
Right.
We're going to give you some ideas on structure here, but really, truly customizing a bonus program to your restaurant is going to be where it's most impactful. So I think we're going to kind of hit the middle of the room with this structure. If you'd like to, though, we'd be happy to talk to you afterwards about how to customize it.
Give us a call, 1-1. So the first thing we really need is we need some transparency. If leaders are responsible for something, then the leaders need to know all of the elements that inside that goal. And leadership must have access to that information needed to affect change. That could be the P&L. That could be whatever reporting tools we have. That could be the tools themselves. That I need to be able to, as an owner, I need to provide all those things and make sure that nothing's hidden, that if you have skin in the game on this, you need to have control of access to this information.
And up front, need to know how the whole thing works. The transparency of how I, as the employee or the leader, get paid is absolutely critical. So if I'm your chef, it's pretty important that I understand whether all the employee meals and the soup that's getting eaten counts against my food cost, or whether I'm tracking it and getting credit back for it.
Or if there's a variance for you.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. The next element there really is about forecasting and budgets. The difference between a goal and a wish is numbers. I want to achieve something. We have to be specific and setting these targets. And the leaders need to know how to do this, and they need to know how to manage it.
Well, if you're going to make pretty tasty food that's also profitable, unfortunately, there's math involved.
Yeah, we got to do math, Alexa. I'm sorry. We got to have priorities. This ultimately is the call to action. It's the starting point. It identifies what makes the most impact, and this becomes the focus, really, of your activities, where to spend the most of your time.
As a chef, it's probably more important for me to manage the steaks than the sugar packets.
I would think so.
And this kind of all goes back to that time management piece. If I know that the sugar packets really aren't where my impact is, then I can choose to spend my time managing the steaks, looking at the yields, looking at the inventory, looking at whatever it might be.
Cooking properly.
And have the confidence that that the right thing is going to happen in my kitchen. There's too many ingredients and too many little tiny moving pieces for us to think we're going to be even capable of managing them all every single day.
That's why we have to prioritize, right? Okay, the next.
Certainly feel like we have to manage them all sometimes.
Yeah, I know. The next one, though, is really the tools and systems. And you can't build a house with only a screwdriver. You need to have the tools necessary to run your business. And it can't be on good intentions either. So the tools that you need maybe for labor, certainly we've got to start with a cost of schedule. If you don't know what you're starting with, that would be a great tool to have. A great tool would also be a food budget. How much do we spend? How much money do I have to spend? Tracking sales and tracking comment cards. We talked about that a little bit earlier to help measure the guest experience. But these are all about telling us information of how are we doing?
Mm-hmm. Well, and a lot of people recoil when I say the word systems, but the fact of the matter is that a few good systems tied together with a few good tools will help leaders and business owners create habits that manage the business in a proactive rather than a reactive way. So if labor is my focus and it's something I'm being bonused on, and I have a POS that tells me what my labor percentage is, and I've got a forecast of what I am going to sell and a budget of what I'm going to spend, then guess what? Monitoring my labor every 15 minutes or every half an hour or every hour on my POS, that's a task. That's a system using a tool. But it also becomes a habit for me as a manager that's a good habit that after a while, I don't have to think about it as a burden or a system or the use of a tool. It's just a habit of how I manage my business.
Well, the nice thing for you is you actually know where your labor is as it's happening rather than getting surprised at the end of the week.
It's the same thing as monitoring ticket times in the back of the house or writing down when the chicken went in the oven so 20 minutes later it's got to come out. All these little things that we sometimes shy away from because they seem like too much work on the front side. But once they become a habit, we don't even feel that they're work at all.
Right. Next element really is about frequency. We all like to be rewarded and recognized for something we just did, monthly, quarterly, keeping it as close to the behavior event as possible. And that way I can recognize the actual activities I did that created the result I got.
I never do well when I remind my husband that thing he did 7 years ago.
He doesn't do well with it either.
No, I know.
Yeah, we got to keep it close. We got to keep it close to the time. And the last piece on this really is the structure to win is the consistent monitoring and follow-up. We have to illustrate the commitment and importance. And as an owner, if it's something that I talk about and work on myself on a regular basis, that shows my leadership and management how important it is. If I never talk about it or address it, how important is it on the other side?
So we have to have a scorecard to keep things straight so everybody knows whether they're achieving this thing or not achieving this thing. And that's a candid conversation that can be had in a business manner.
I think a scorecard is a really important tool. And that's actually today's download, is we're going to send you out a copy of this scorecard. It'll come shortly after the close of the solution hour. And this is a completely editable Excel worksheet. You all know how I like my Excel worksheets. It's a pretty simple tool as far as setting budgets and bonuses and targets. So here we'd start off with coming up with your potential budget or your bonus window. In this case, it's a quarter. Here's the amount paid out we said we're going to do, and there's the amount down at the bottom as far as what is available. And then what we want to do is now you can edit the criteria. In this case, it's sales, cost of goods, labor, and guest experience. You can weight by category. 30% of your bonus is sales, 30% cost of goods, labor, and then 10% is going to be guest experience. But you can make that according to what you think it is. And then what each category value is, and then the goal qualifications. Cost of good is 31.5 to 33.5 is the range we need to be in. Being low food cost is a bad thing too. So we can talk about that one a little bit. But that's the next piece of that. And the final piece is, as a manager, now you can track where you're at. Did I qualify on all four elements? And now I'm managing very focused on the elements. This is a download you'll get here in a little bit, and you guys can design that as you see fit for your business.
Now, this, like we said, is pretty middle of the room. Probably a lot of people are wondering, well, how do I come up with how much I can offer? And we said that we would answer questions at the end, but I have seen some questions over here in reference to how much income does my restaurant have to have in order to offer a bonus program? Or Jake, who basically just said, how do I even scorecard guest experience? So really, you guys, this is a very basic criteria scorecard. You could choose whatever bonus criteria you want. To answer Jake's question, guest experience scores, probably Yelp reviews, TripAdvisor,
comment cards, aggregate those.
Or maybe you just focus on one of those. We have one customer out in the middle of Washington that's on a major highway, and so their guest experience scores come specifically from their TripAdvisor scores, and they work with their team all the time to talk about how to communicate to their guests that TripAdvisor is where to give them that feedback. So
another way to scorecard guest experience, and this actually goes to our efficiency inside the building, is your ticket times would be a reflection of guest experience. If you have great, regular, consistent ticket times, you're providing a consistent experience. Average check would be a great one. What is the value of somebody sitting in your dining room to enjoy your business at its fullest? What should that be?
So we certainly know that there are a lot of variables under these 4 bonus criteria that we threw out here, and probably a lot of other information or data analytics that would need to be done to get to this scorecard. The scorecard would just be the final conversation with the manager, and there probably are several tools underneath that accumulate, obviously, to these numbers. So
this is just really basically, like Alexa said, a middle of the room example that we wanted to offer to everybody.
The guest experience is really critical. It is the thing that's driving everything. So I want to ask our last poll question in reference to guest experience, and simply, do you think that a bonus program in your restaurant would impact your guest experience positively or negatively, or maybe not at all? A great example of that could be if your bonus program includes increasing sales and lunch is your goal targeted time, then the business needs to get more sales at lunchtime. The guests, what do they need? Well, they need a quick and tasty lunch. They need to get in and out really fast. So you bonus on maybe the turn times at the table. For the front of the house, they monitor those turn times. They don't walk away and give people a couple more minutes with the menu. They make suggestions and then get the order really quickly to the kitchen. If you're bonusing on turn times to make this lunch goal happen, then your back of the house, your chef is going to build a quicker menu, and they're going to monitor those ticket times in the production in the back of the house. And then the front of the house, on the other side of it, they're going to get the order really fast. We're going to cook it really fast. They're going to get people cashed out really quickly rather than holding us hostage for 8 minutes of a 30-minute lunch, just waiting for my credit card to
process. Give them the gift of time right there.
So at that point, it's something as simple as your turn times at the table, like you mentioned, can be a bonusable item that can improve your lunch sales.
That's a key measurement of growing sales. It really is.
Now, when we look at the poll, the majority of everybody really did feel like a bonus program would have a positive impact on guest experience.
That's great.
And that's great. 14% thought maybe not at all. I'm not really sure what different concepts we are talking to out there, though. So there might be places where it doesn't necessarily.
There's a wide
have
variety of business we have in this industry, of course. So talking about guest experience, we really need to do is ensure that we're not making decisions that are bonus influenced and not really good long-term decisions for the business.
Oh, so if I want good food costs, I can sell little teeny tiny burgers?
Well, I would say that we should probably need to back off from that a little bit, because what we want to do is start setting the parameters. And these are really we call this the guardrails for a bonus. And setting specific specifications. This is the product we buy.
Well, the brand that we're adhering to requires that.
Right, because Alexa, if we're menuing an 8-ounce burger and we're advertising that on the menu,
and it's teeny tiny,
and you want to hit that food cost bonus, it better not become a 0.8-ounce burger, right?
That's not really a fair way to achieve the bonus.
No, not a fair way. And the other side of that truly is the labor side too, is what is the minimum labor cost targets to ensure the guest experience is true. And I did have a good positive bonus experience with another operator years ago where his target was to hit a 15% profit margin. And what he told me was, anything over that, Chris, that's your bonus.
Wow.
Yeah, that was my first wow. And he goes, however, this is who we buy from. These are our recipes. This is the product we have. You have a minimum food cost and a maximum food cost.
Oh, there's the challenge.
There you go. We have a minimum labor cost and a maximum labor cost. Because if I wanted to run labor, I could just schedule me and a cashier. Giddy up. But then we end up poisoning the sales. Mm-hmm. So we have to have guardrails in place for this. So I'm making the right decisions for the business. And these right decisions also move on into other areas of the business.
Sales growth. Well, obviously, a thoughtful upselling experience in a lot of ways is what we're talking about here. Our guest experience can be very negatively impacted if our team goes to the table just with the purpose of selling the caviar, the Dom Perignon, and the filet.
And being pushy. You sure about that?
How about now? Really, sales growth comes through this thoughtful upselling and things like our lunch program that we just talked about, identifying those periods where we might be able to just get more people into the building. But you're only going to get people in if they're coming in for a great guest experience.
Right. And that's the next piece is
Absolutely.
the great guest experience.
Yeah. What do I say? Walk a mile in your guest's shoes. I guess one of my biggest pet peeves as a chef is going out to eat and ordering salad, which I love, and having it attack me when I'm trying to get it off the plate.
Fights back.
So I'm always looking at how big everybody has prepped their salad to see if they've chopped it with the intention of putting it on the plate so that the guests can eat a salad without wearing it or throwing it around on the table.
Right.
There are a lot of things in our restaurants where I do say walk a mile in your guest's shoes, because if we do a manager's walkthrough so there aren't cigarette butts out front in the parking lot, if we spoon check all of the sauces and the soups on the line before every service so that they're appropriate flavor and consistency, heck, if we send a lot of takeout out of our restaurant, if we order our own takeout every now and then and see how it shows up, all those things impact our guest experience, but oftentimes are things that we don't look at because we're so busy just running around making
walking
food.
Past a wobbly table.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's all guest experience.
Mm-hmm.
So what we tried to do today is untangle this bonus thing a little bit. So we talked about tangible ways leadership and management can engage the entrepreneurial attitude, and which we know really grows the staff engagement as well. Talked about the obligations on both sides of the coin, owners and managers. We talk about the structure. A winning program, it becomes a win-win-win. The ownership wins, the managers win, and the guests win. That's the solid piece of that. And lastly, some guardrails to help keep us on the right track to grow sales, grow the experience, and make sure that we're not that we don't go off track on things we're trying to go for.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully we didn't freak everybody out too much about bonuses. I'm really excited about the side conversation going on in the room, Chris. I know you're monitoring the PowerPoint, so maybe aren't reading all of these, but everybody's having some pretty good interactions here. I do want to answer Alan Pegram's question about, is there a minimum amount of sales a customer needs to do to have a bonus program or to do a bonus program properly?
I don't really think so. The bottom line, though, is whatever those sales are, if it translates to profit at the end of the day on the P&L. So that's all about the structure and the formula of the business itself. Because you could have a pretty low volume restaurant, but if you're making money and one of the elements is to try to grow it, as long as you can finance it and pay it, I don't see any reason why you couldn't.
Because the idea is that the business will make more money out of the behaviors
Correct.
that drive the bonus anyway.
Correct. I don't see a minimum, just as long as we're making money in the first place.
Some bonuses will just be smaller than others, though.
Right.
And that's the nature of the beast.
Right.
And that, again, maybe it's not entirely a cash bonus. Think about some of the other things your business might be able to offer people that don't cost you as much as just a pile of cash or a check. That could be part of a bonus program. Is it a prestigious parking spot? Is it having a day off during the week that employee really needs or wants all the time? There's a lot of other ways we can get creative in our industry with things that people find valuable, especially time with their families and friends.
You could buy a manager dinner. Hey, go out and secret shop this new restaurant for us.
Casey asked a question here, too, that I want to throw at you, Chris. It says, what are the pros and cons of building a bonus program by percentage or flat rate?
Well, I could say the cons, one of the early cons is exactly my liquor cost bonus. We have to be able to make sure that it's a fair target. So that would be one of those things that I would caution about. So, and that's one of those cases where menu mix actually drives cost of goods far more than prices on things like that. So in the case of my restaurant where that margarita wasn't even in the top 10, that made that target an impossibility. Mm-hmm. So it has to be a realistic possibility. I would say, Casey, you could use either one. It just has to be achievable. I have to work for it. Yes. It's not a free payday, but I have to work for it.
Okay. And then somebody asked, how would I include personal growth and development in a bonus program and still be objective?
That's
Sounds
a
like
great
somebody that
question.
really wants to help their leaders be better leaders, but that feels kind of subjective.
Yeah, and I think that we've kind of illustrated that subjectivity in bonus programs can be a little bit risky. But here, this is a good one because some external trainings. Hey, Alexa, I want you to develop. I want to help you with your personal development. You'll bonus if you go through 8 trainings.
You're sending me to bar classes?
Yeah. Go through some 8 trainings. And if you accomplish 8 trainings, because whatever you're learning, ideally, you're bringing back to the business, and that could be a non-subjective target.
So go to those trainings and bring something back, and
Right.
that's a bonusable way of counting the activity
Exactly.
that I'm being bonused on.
Exactly. Very,
So-
very tangible that
So
way.
it doesn't have to be Excel spreadsheets all the time.
Not all the time. Not every answer I know is an Excel spreadsheet.
Well, hopefully everybody out there enjoyed as much as Chris and I did talking about bonuses today. It's a pitfall that I think we can leap over, and in my opinion, can really help our industry to employ and recruit and retain great people that grow into leaders.
It's a powerful tool if used properly. We really enjoyed talking about this today. We've decided we're going to talk, because we know this is a hot button, is labor cost strategies. We're going to work on that in the fall, upcoming soon. So stay tuned to the Solutionar format, and your FSA sales team will make sure that you're aware of it. And we would love to have you join us again and have a great in-depth conversation about labor management and costing strategies for us.
Thanks for joining us on the Business Advantage series, brought to you by FSA.
Mic drop, we're out.